The cold and quiet space floated above a broken world called Narok. Big fires burned across its destroyed cities. Smoke rose high into the sky. The people of Narveen, once strong and proud, were now being wiped out. High above the planet, huge, warships from the Draven Empire waited like monsters. They kept shooting without stopping, turning the last safe places into dust and ash. Far below the surface, hidden in a secret bunker, Leader Ryon, head of the Narvaean people, watched the destruction on a small, shaking screen. The screams of his people echoed around him as the final defenses failed. He turned to his advisors. His voice was full of fear and urgency. "We have only one choice left," he said. His hands were shaking. "Turn on the beacon." The officers looked at each other. They knew the Galactic Union had already refused to help before. The message might be ignored again. But Ryan had no other choice. One officer finally pressed a glowing blue button. A signal was sent into space. A last cry for help. But this signal was different. It was old. It used a secret code forgotten by most. Only one type of being could understand it: the Deathborn. Far across the galaxy, in an old and forgotten place called Outpost Emberfall, something began to move. This place had been silent for hundreds of years. It was buried deep under the surface of a dead moon. No lights, no sound, and all the machines were off. But now the signal from Narok reached it. A single red light blinked on. Deep inside the outpost, a very old war AI, artificial intelligence, woke up. It read the message. It scanned the signal and understood. Enemy attack detected. Help requested. The AI paused only for a moment, exactly 0.3 seconds, then activated a secret program called Protocol Emberfall. It was a command so ancient many believed it was just a myth. All around the system, long-forgotten warships began to power up. These ships were huge and had not moved for centuries. Machines repaired themselves. Weapons charged. Engines roared. The AI sent one short message back to Earth's hidden command center. Protocol Emberfall. Deathborn fleet is moving. Back on Earth, deep underground in a secret military base, Admiral Jaren Holt sat in his quiet office. Suddenly, his screen turned red. He leaned forward and frowned. "Protocol Emberfall," he whispered. "That was impossible. The last time the Deathborn were activated, whole empires had fallen." He opened the message and read the call for help from the Narveen people. Jaren clenched his fists. He had seen too many messages like this. Cries for help ignored by the, Galactic Union. But Earth never ignored a call for help. He pressed a button on his desk. Within seconds, top military officers entered the room. Their eyes widened when they saw the alert. "This can't be real," one said quietly. "It's real," Jaren replied firmly. "The only question is, what will we do now?" And no, one hesitated. Hidden deep inside the Sol system, Earth's secret warships came alive. Their engines lit up, weapons activated, and stealth shields covered them. The Deathborn fleet was returning, and the Draven Empire had no idea what was coming. The Draven Empire had ruled the outer galaxies for hundreds of years. They were strong, cruel, and had never lost a war. Now, they were taking over Narok, just like they had taken many other worlds. On board the massive warship Dagger of Dusk, Admiral Vorkus, leader of the Draven fleet, stood proudly on the bridge. He watched the final cities of the Narveen fall under heavy attack. They begged for help. Vorkus laughed. "How weak." His second-in-command, Commander Relan, smiled. "Another world belongs to the Empire. There's no one left to stop us." Vorkus nodded, arms crossed. "No species dares to challenge the Draven. We are unstoppable." But then, an alarm suddenly rang out on the command deck. A strange signal had appeared, not from the Narvean, not from the Galactic Union. It came from deep space and from a place believed to be empty. The name shocked everyone. Outpost Emberfall. Vorkus's smile faded. That name was cursed, whispered in fear by old warriors. "Confirm the signal," he shouted. Relan checked the data. His face turned pale. It's real. It's them. Vorkus felt a chill down his spine. Across the galaxy, on the warship UNS, Revenant Admiral Jaren Holt stood on the command bridge. Around him, officers worked quickly. Red warning lights glowed across the room. The Deathborn fleet was ready. The huge warships moved silently through space, their engines humming with deadly power. On glowing screens, the destination appeared. Narok. Status? Jaren asked. All ships in formation, replied Captain Myra Vasquez. Weapons ready. Stealth active. Jaren nodded slowly. His face showed no emotion. It had been centuries since the Deathborn had been called. Humanity had stayed silent all this time. But now, the galaxy would remember them. He looked at the tactical map. Draven ships were already surrounding Narok, thinking they had won. They have no idea what's coming, Jaren whispered. Captain Vasquez stood straight. Orders, sir? Jaren's eyes turned cold. Begin the hunt. The Draven fleet had no idea they were being watched. Their ships floated confidently above Narok, still bombing the planet below. They believed the fight was over. They believed they had won. But in the darkness of space, the Deathborn fleet was waiting. One by one, Draven ships started disappearing. No explosions, no alarms, just gone. Cruisers vanished from the radar. Patrols stopped answering. Everything was silent. On the Draven flagship Dagger of Dusk, Admiral Vorkus slammed his fist on the control panel. What is happening? He shouted. His officers looked confused and afraid. No one had answers. Then, one damaged ship managed to send a short broken message before disappearing. Shadows. Something is hunting us. And then, static. Fear spread through the Draven fleet. They had always been the hunters. Now, they were the hunted. On the UNS Revenant, Admiral Jaren Holt watched calmly. His officers moved quickly but silently. Every move was planned. Every strike was perfect. The Deathborn didn't attack to destroy everything. They attacked with purpose. Vasquez walked up beside him. Enemy reinforcements are 6 hours away. Jaren didn't even blink. We won't need that long. She looked at him carefully. Permission to engage? He glanced at the screen. The Draven fleet was panicking, making mistakes. He could feel their fear. Proceed, he said. Suddenly it began. Massive human warships appeared out of nowhere. Their stealth fields dropped like broken glass, and then chaos. Huge bullets, kinetic rounds, tore through Draven ships like paper. Invisible drones flew into enemy engines, disabling them in seconds. Snipers from hidden ships took out enemy command centers with perfect aim. On Dagger of Dusk, Vorkus watched in horror as one of his strongest destroyers was cut in half from a single shot. This isn't war, whispered Commander Relin, shaking. It's extermination. Vorkus growled, trying to hide his fear. We are the Draven Empire. We don't surrender. But deep inside, he knew the truth. They had never faced an enemy like this. The humans weren't here for conquest. They were here to end the war before it could even begin. And the Draven were losing fast. Admiral Vorkus stood frozen on the bridge of Dagger of Dusk. His once powerful fleet was falling apart. One by one, ships were vanishing without a trace. This can't be real, whispered Commander Relin. We control this whole area. No fleet should be able to move here without us knowing. Vorkus gritted his teeth. His claws dug into the control panel. He was trying to understand what was happening. Then a name came to his mind. A name the Draven Empire had worked hard to erase humans. He whispered it to himself, stunned. Send an alert to the whole system, he ordered. Full battle mode, now. Relin hesitated. But we don't even know what we're fighting. Vorkus turned, his eyes burning with anger. That's what makes it worse. High above the planet Narok, the Deathborn fleet remained silent, hidden, waiting for the right moment. On board the UNS Revenant, Admiral Jaren Holt watched the enemy from his command chair. His crew worked quietly, the red glow of war lights reflecting on their faces. The Draven still didn't know who was attacking them, but they would soon. Captain Vasquez stepped forward, her face serious. Draven backup ships are on their way. They'll arrive in 6 hours. Jaren didn't flinch. We'll be done long before that. She studied his face. Permission to attack again? Jaren looked at the map. The enemy was disorganized, scared, weak. He gave a small nod. Begin. On the Draven flagship, alarms screamed. Stealth fields around the human ships broke apart, revealing huge dark war machines, covered in weapons not seen for centuries. Then all hell broke loose. Giant human warships opened fire. Their shots moved faster than sound, ripping through Draven ships like they were made of glass. Snipers took out commanders, drones disabled engines. Entire Draven ships exploded before they could even react. Admiral Vorkas stared in horror as one of his best warships was destroyed instantly. Commander Reland's voice shook. "This isn't a war, it's a massacre," Vorkas growled again. "We are the Draven Empire, we don't give up." But inside, he knew. This wasn't just a battle. It was the beginning of the end. The Draven Empire had always been the predator. They attacked first, crushed enemies, and left nothing behind. But now, they were the prey. Admiral Vorkas stared at the battle screen. His fleet, once the strongest in the galaxy, was falling apart. Ships were disappearing one after another. No escape, no survivors, just silence. "This is impossible," whispered Commander Relan. "We ruled this area. No one can fight here without us knowing." Vorkas clenched his jaw. His mind raced, searching history for any clue, anything to explain this. And then the name came back again. Humans. His voice was low, angry. "Send an alert to all Draven forces. Get everyone ready for full battle." "But sir," Relan said nervously, "we still don't know what we're fighting." Vorkas turned, his eyes filled with rage. "Exactly. That's why it's even worse." Above the battlefield, the UNS Revenant floated like a ghost. Inside, Admiral Jaren Holt stood silently, watching his officers move like shadows. The Draven still had no idea what hit them. "They'll figure it out soon," he said. Captain Vasquez walked over with grim news. "They've sent for reinforcements. Estimated arrival, 6 hours." "We won't need that long," Jaren replied, coldly. She paused, then asked, "Permission to strike again?" He looked at the screen. The enemy was crumbling. Mistakes, fear, chaos. It was all there. "Proceed." And just like that, the hunt continued. On the Draven flagship, more ships exploded. Human warships moved through space like hunters, quiet and deadly. Kinetic rounds shredded enemy ships. Drones disabled engines. Snipers ended the battle before it even began. Admiral Vorkas watched as another destroyer was torn apart by a single perfect shot. "This isn't war," Commander Relan whispered. "This is extermination." Vorkas growled, but even he couldn't lie to himself now. The humans weren't here to win land or power. They had come to end the threat. And the Draven? They were the threat, and their time was over. The battle was turning into a nightmare. Admiral Vorkas watched in growing terror as the Draven fleet crumbled. On the screens, ships vanished from the map. Entire groups disappeared before they could even fight back. Even the strongest Draven battlecruisers, built to survive planet-wide wars, were being destroyed in seconds. "This can't be happening," Vorkas muttered. Commander Relan stared at the screen. "Sir, the human flagship, the UNS Revenant, is targeting us." His voice was shaking. "We need to retreat." Vorkas slammed his fist on the panel. "Retreat to where? There's nowhere left." Across space on the UNS Revenant, Admiral Jaren Holt stood still, eyes locked on the chaos unfolding. His officers were calm. Every move was planned. Every strike was exact. The Draven were strong, but not ready for an enemy like this. An enemy that didn't miss. An enemy that didn't warn. For centuries, people had forgotten about humans. Now they remembered. Captain Vasquez approached. Most of their command ships are destroyed. The rest are falling apart. They're trying to regroup. Jaren nodded. Send the message. She walked to the console and typed in 5 simple words, sending them straight to the Draven's command. Ship, this is your only warning. On Dagger of Dusk, Admiral Vorkus saw the message appear. He read the words and his blood turned cold. We can't win this, he whispered. The bridge went silent. The Draven Empire had never heard those words from one of their own. They ruled by fear. They had never lost. Never bowed. Never begged. But now, even their admiral had lost hope. The mighty Draven Empire was collapsing. Their strongest ships were gone. Their leaders were silent. The fear that had once ruled the galaxy was now useless. And still, the humans said nothing. No demands, no warnings, no peace talks, only silence, the kind that meant the end. On the bridge of UNS Revenant, Admiral Jaren Holt watched the Draven fleet fall apart. His crew was silent, focused. Every shot they fired was perfect. Every strike left the enemy broken. Have they replied to our warning? He asked. Captain Vasquez checked the signals. No, sir. They're still trying to run. Jaren didn't react. Then they haven't learned. He turned back to the battlefield. They weren't destroying everything. They were choosing their targets. Breaking the Empire's power, without mercy, but with purpose. This wasn't war. This was a lesson. On the Draven ship Dagger of Dusk, Admiral Vorkus watched another battleship explode. His officers were frozen in fear. He had one choice left. Open a channel to High Command, he ordered. A glowing image appeared by Supreme Commander Zorak, ruler of the Draven Dominion. His cold reptilian eyes narrowed. Admiral Vorkus, Zorak said. Is it done? Have we won? Vorkus hesitated. His pride screamed not to say it. But he couldn't lie. No, he whispered. We can't win. Zorak's face turned dark. You are wrong. The Draven do not lose. Vorkus looked at the battle again. Wreckage floated everywhere, flames burned in space. You don't understand what we're facing, he said. They are not just humans. They are something else. And then, the signal went dead. For the first time in its history, the Draven Empire faced a truth it could no longer escape. They had already lost. They just didn't know it until now. The Draven homeworld was dying. Once it had been full of power, tall towers, glowing cities, and endless war machines. Now, everything burned. Explosions lit the sky. The last of their soldiers were fighting. But it didn't matter. Humanity hadn't come to take land. They had come to end the threat. Forever. On board the UNS Revenant, Admiral Jaren Holt stared at the planet below, now covered in smoke and fire. Captain Vasquez walked over. Sir, resistance is collapsing. Their last defense stations have been destroyed. Casualties? Jaren asked quietly. She checked. Minimal, sir. They couldn't stop us. Jaren nodded slowly. Of course they couldn't. This wasn't just another war. This was extermination. The Draven had started a war they thought they could win, but they had awakened a force they couldn't understand. And now they were paying the price. Far below, deep inside a last hidden bunker, Admiral Vorkus sat on the floor. Smoke filled the air. His officers were either dead or trembling. The humans were coming. They had ignored every call for surrender, every desperate message, every cry for mercy. A young officer turned to Vorkus, his voice shaking. Sir, what do we do? Vorkus didn't answer right away. He had once commanded fleets that crushed entire civilizations. But now he was the one begging. Another deep explosion shook the bunker. The lights flickered, the walls cracked, and then the doors began to break. One final message echoed across the last working Draven channels. You chose war. Now face the consequences. Then, darkness, and silence. The Draven Empire was no more. The Draven Empire was gone. Once feared across hundreds of star systems, it now existed only in ashes. Their warships were destroyed. Their cities were ruins. Their homeworld, a silent graveyard floating in space. But humanity did not celebrate. There were no cheers, no speeches, because this wasn't a victory. It was a warning. On board the UNS Revenant, Admiral Jaron Holt stood in front of a glowing display showing the remains of the Draven homeworld. Nothing was left, no survivors, no future. Captain Vasquez approached. "Sir, all enemy strongholds are neutralized. The Draven Dominion is gone." Jaron didn't smile. His face stayed calm, unreadable. "And the Narveen? They're rebuilding, with our help." He nodded. That was the difference between humans and the Draven. The Draven destroyed, the humans protected. Across the galaxy, the message of Earth's wrath spread like wildfire. Governments whispered in fear. Military leaders studied the ruins of the Draven Empire and asked, who are the humans really? For centuries, the Galactic Union had ignored humanity, called them weak, called them irrelevant. But now they knew the truth. The Narveen, once left to die, now stood under Earth's shield. The Union had abandoned them. Humanity had not. And the message was clear. If you attack Earth, or those under its protection, you will find no mercy. On a distant, hidden world, a new warlord received the news. He watched the footage of Draven ships burning, his sharp claws tapping his metal throne. A strange smile formed on his face. "Interesting," he whispered. And far out in the blackness of space, another storm was already rising.